I've always been an environmentalist. I was born in 1937. There were 2 billion people on Earth. You know, now there's more than 8 billion. And so there was a lot more nature. And I'm a tomboy, and I was always outside. Nature has always been in my bones, in my cells. About 10 years ago, maybe less, I realized, I started reading more, and I realized what we're doing to climate, which means what we're doing to us, what we're doing to the future for our grandchildren and our children. In fact, it's happening right now. It's not like something in the future.
Right.
And I realized this could destroy everything. Our existence is being challenged here, all because an industry, the fossil fuel industry, wants to make more money. And I mean, I try to understand what must they think when they go to sleep at night, these men?
Do you think we're at a point where we can still turn back? I mean, or
the scientists say it's not too late, but we have to act fast. And of course, every day we read something more that the Trump administration is doing. When it really hit me, and a lot had to do with Greta Thunberg, I was very inspired by the youth movement that she unleashed in 2019. And, you know, she was saying, you know, it's our future that's in danger. Where are the older people to come in so I thought, I'm going to come. I'm going to be an older person who will fight for your future. And so we started Fire Drill Fridays. And up until then, my work had all been done through nonprofits. A moment came when we realized, when I say we, I have a small team that I work with that are far more expert than I am. You know, we have scientists and artists and activists and all kinds of people that are fighting for the climate for a long time. And we haven't gotten the policies that we need. There was a bill that Biden put forward called the Build Back Better bill, didn't pass, but that came as close to as being commensurate with what science.
Well, no, it seems like, I mean, like the messaging, like your messaging, whether it's the text, the emails, et cetera, like first it seemed very climate specific, but then after President Trump was elected again, it seems like it's gotten a little bit broader in terms of like saving our democracy.
We're facing 2 existential crises, climate and democracy. And it's now or never for both. They are very interconnected. We have to solve them together. We can't have a stable democracy and with an unstable climate, and we can't have a stable climate unless we have a democracy. And so we have to fight both together. At the point where we realized that we weren't getting the politicians to do what was needed, and most of them take money from the fossil fuel industry, or at least way too many of them, both Democrats and Republicans, that kind of showed us, okay, this is what we have to do now. So we started a PAC. Our mantra is, if you can't change people, change people.
We obviously all know your long-time involvement in politics, but I was just wondering if you could sort of compare the state of this country right now, you know, the polarization, et cetera, with, like, say, like the late 60s, you know, during the Vietnam War, Kent State, civil rights. I mean, if you think there are parallels in terms of how divided our country is and how fragile our democracy is?
I'm not sure that what we have right now in the U.S. is a democracy. You know, what they're trying to do in Texas,
right,
with the gerrymandering.
I was going to ask you about
yeah. I mean, this is not democratic.
Do you feel it's as tumultuous as the, you know, as the 60s when, you know, there were so many different things going on?
It's far graver, far graver now than it was. I mean, he hired the goons to go in and do illegal things, but basically, you know, when he was told, you got to step down, he stepped down.
He created the EPA and said, clean water.
He also, this is important, the first Earth Day, there were millions and millions of people in the United States in the streets. Because of that, Richard Nixon, a conservative Republican, created the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Environmental Protection Agency, a Republican.
And if you go to his library, there's a whole section about all the environmental stuff. You know, and I think most people today wouldn't realize that it was a Republican president that did all of that.
That's right.
So how far has the party come?
It's the dark side of the moon now compared to that. But it does show how important public protests are. It's critical. And this is, really one of the key things that I want to get across. We can protest, but ultimately we have to take power. It's about power. That's why voting is so important. When democracy is failing you, you don't pull back and kind of become more moderate. You lean into it and become even stronger. And that's what we're trying to do.
And that's what when you brought up down ballot races, that's actually exactly what I wanted to ask you about, because I feel like oftentimes when you see celebrities involved in politics, they might throw a fundraiser, or they might speak at a rally for a presidential.
No, I've never been that kind of an activist.
So how I feel like what you're doing is much more granular. I mean, whether it's like knocking on doors in Arizona for legislative candidates, or it's 110 degrees there. How did you decide to focus on down ballot races, like first state legislatures, city councils, and how do you? I mean, there's so many candidates that you could obviously pick. Like, how do you pick the ones that you want?
Okay, first question, why down ballot? I hate to say this, but, in terms of playing the long game, the Republicans have been better than the Democrats. Do you remember the Tea Party? Mm-hmm. A few decades ago, the Tea Party, below the radar, people didn't really realize what was happening, using Koch brother money or big oil money. They started to work down ballot, and they took over state legislatures. They took over governorships and mayors and city councils, boards of supervisors. And before we knew what had happened, they had power on the grassroots level. That's what we're trying to do. Really, especially right now, and especially since Trump was elected, the climate work that's really valuable is happening on the state and local level. And it is happening all over the country, all over the world, far more than people realize. Down ballot, if you come in, especially for primaries, you can really make a difference. Not all Democrats are the same. So we do a lot of vetting. We question them a lot. We want candidates who have shown publicly courage in standing up to fossil fuels. We want candidates who can win. We're not a protest pack. We're in it to win it. Do they live in a community that is very polluted, surrounded by industry, with no elected officials that are standing up to help them? We try to go in.
For environmental justice.
Yeah. I'm thinking Commerce City, right next to Denver, for example. They're being polluted to death. I'm thinking in Texas, that's really a long game. Is there a way to get a trifecta? A trifecta means that one party has the governorship and both houses of the state legislature. When Trump was first elected, we had 6 Democratic trifectas. We now have 17. We can't have people anymore that are taking money from the industries and not standing up for their constituents. And, in the beginning, none of us had ever done anything like this before. We had always worked in the C3 arena. Right. And here we were doing electoral work. But, a very important thing happened. It kind of turned a light bulb on in my head. We were pressuring Governor Newsom to create setbacks, health and safety setbacks, so that oil wells weren't directly in communities. And it was hard. He wasn't moving on it. And somebody very high up in his campaign said to us, you can have millions of people in your organizations all over California, but you don't have a big enough carrot or stick to move the governor. And we said, why? And they said, you don't have an electoral strategy. Wow, okay, that was a big learning.
When was that, roughly?
It was 2020. And since we've started the PAC, it's interesting how politicians deal with us differently. They know that we've got money. They know that we have tens of thousands of volunteers all over the country because I've worked with Greenpeace, because of Fire Drill Fridays, and because of the people that are on my board. We have a lot of volunteers. And that's another thing that, down ballot races, they don't get a lot of money. They don't get a lot of volunteers. They don't get a lot of media. There's a lot that they lack. And so when we come in, we don't just give them money. If they usually get 8 people to canvass, door knock for them, and I come in, they get 50.
Right.
we triple what they can raise with fundraisers.
I was talking to a state legislator in Arizona who was talking about you door knocking there. And so what was people's, I mean, you're on a sort of light note.
It's funny.
What was people's reaction? Like, what did they say when they saw you on their door?
I've had people walking out of their laundry room and dropping all the laundry. I don't know if it's because we've chosen careful places or anything, but they're so friendly. We always hug, but there's always astonishment. You don't expect a person to show up. A lot of time I've canvassed in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, and people don't know who I am.
Really?
And I don't tell them.
Really?
No, yeah. I want to hear. Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's when you really learn. Canvassing, it's amazing. You wouldn't think that in just a few minutes on someone's doorstep you can really find out a lot. I learned to canvass when I was married to Tom Hayden, and I did a lot of canvassing for him, and I loved it. I love talking to people and finding out what they care about and what they're scared of and what they're angry about. And, back then many people would invite me into their living room and it would become a longer conversation. It was fascinating.
What went through your mind election night when it became clear?
It's funny. The first time he won, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I think that what I experienced, it was a visceral thing. And I thought, this is PTSD. And it lasted for months. And oddly enough, this time, even though it's much worse this time because he was prepared, I didn't. I think because I know that what I'm doing is the strategic thing to be doing. We need both. We need the protests, but then we need the electoral work. people have to vote.
With everything that's going on in the country in the last 6 months, is that what motivates you? Like, how do you keep going?
Already, it's what they call an off year. For Jane Fonda Climate Pact, we don't have off years. We've already had about 7 victories, special elections.
Well, Arizona, Grijalva. I saw the fundraiser you did, the virtual fundraiser you did with Lily Tomlin and some other folks. And these types of races normally don't attract that kind of attention. So, I mean, it seems like...
That's why we're being successful.
Yeah. In your writings, you talk about sort of like the 3 chapters of your life.
Yeah.
And you're, in your 3rd chapter, I mean, you could be off, living in Paris or in Aspen.
Yeah, I don't understand. People always say that to me, and I don't understand. People think I've been an activist all my life. I haven't. I became an activist at 32 years old, and before then, I led a kind of a life of ignorance, somewhat hedonistic. Maybe deep down, I knew that once I know something, I can't turn away. But, if you're ignorant, maybe you can be forgiven. But once you know about a problem, an issue, and you turn away, then you're part of the problem. And, it started with the Vietnam War, and ironically, it was American soldiers who opened my eyes to the reality of the war. I was a major latecomer to understanding why the war was wrong. Once I realized what was really happening in Vietnam, then I was 100%, that's all I did until the war ended. And I focused on other things, income inequality and workers' rights, and that's why I made 9 to 5. And
in terms of fossil fuels and climate change, I did want to ask you about former President Biden. I mean, at one point you were protesting him because of fossil fuels. But then, you were at the fundraiser for him.
Well,
was
I 100% happy with President Biden? Absolutely not. I get so mad at people who say, I don't like him, so I'm not going to vote. Oh, one young person, and I said, if we don't get Biden reelected, or then it was Kamala, we're going to have fascism. And this young person said to me, we already have fascism. They don't know history. We don't teach civics anymore, so they don't understand that what's happening now is leading to fascism.
Do you think Democrats need to change their messaging? Like, what do you think is going?
Absolutely.
How do you think they should change their messaging?
I mean, I read about it in the LA Times every day. You've got to focus on the economy, and for me, you've got to focus on climate and help people understand how if we don't deal with the climate, the economy is going to go out of the window. I mean, we have $1 trillion going out to try to repair the climate catastrophes that are happening in this country. It's destroying the economy. We can't keep going this way. We have to keep explaining to people. We have to make sure that people understand. If we're not talking about it, then people aren't going to care. At every opportunity, we need to talk about it. One thing that I try to emphasize every time I speak publicly, and I said it in my SAG speech too, 78 million people voted for Trump. They're not all MAGA. A lot of them were people who were just really angry and really hurting because they can't pay for things that they need. Healthcare, groceries, it's getting worse now. And so those people are going to have buyer's remorse. And we cannot judge them. We have to open our arms and welcome them. We need a big tent. And what the Democrats have to talk about is income inequality, what the Republicans are doing to our democracy, and to health care, and to food, and everything else. Everything we buy is going to be more expensive because of what Trump is doing. But we have to help people understand that there is a climate crisis, and that if they want to avoid the floods and the fire, we have to stop burning fossil fuels.
But it does seem like there's a segment of the Democratic Party that is basically like, oh, Trump voters are all racist, they're all misogynist. They're all, whatever. I mean,
No.
I mean, how does the party need to?
They're angry. They're angry, and they should. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Democratic Party was all over the middle of this country. There were strong unions. If somebody wasn't sure how to vote, they'd go to their union. That's why unions have been weakened, because they were too powerful politically. Money was in the middle of the country for people to organize their communities and things like that. When over the last couple of decades, you don't hear from people in Michigan said to me, we never saw Hillary. We never heard from her campaign and so forth. Biden and Kamala didn't talk enough about the working class people. They've become too in bed with their donors. The donors control too much of the message.
And as you've gotten older, how do you feel like it does affect, whether it's President Biden's capabilities? There's questions about, whether he was still up for the job. I mean, how, just based on your own experience, like how has getting older sort of affected your ability to do stuff? And how do you think it potentially affected President Biden, President Trump, Senator Feinstein?
I was going to say, you don't have as much energy. The thing is, I do.
It seems like.
I don't know why. I don't take speed or anything, but things start to go wrong when you're older. Cells begin to break down, and it's not, the synapses don't. I mean, I do public speaking all the time, and I'll sometimes start a sentence and forget what I wanted to say. So I just say I'm old and I forgot what was I talking about? And people laugh and it's fine. But yeah, you are a little compromised. On the other hand, you're wiser. And so I'm not against older people getting elected, but they have to be healthy. And I think, it's.
I mean, you can say, oh, I forgot what I was saying. But I mean, if you're the president and you say, wait, what was I saying? I mean, it's a different.
Right. And so you get out before you're at that point.
So what is next?
No, this is it.
Okay.
This is it. This is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, which is a comforting feeling. It's one reason why I don't get depressed. Greta Thunberg says, everybody goes looking for hope. No, look for action, and hope will come. It's when you take action that you feel hopeful.
How much do you plan on traveling in before the midterms?
I can't travel enough. I like it. I love going into communities to work for the candidates.
Are you optimistic about the midterms?
Yeah.
Do you think Democrats can retake the House?
Texas has me worried.
Right. But in California, so do you support what California might do in response to Texas?
Yes. I mean, when they go low, we go high. Power is what matters. We have to take back power. And if that means redrawing our districts, we can always change it later. But we have to do what we have to do to win back power. And the Democratic Party has to become a party of the people. So big changes have to be made.